And we are live. Hello, folks. Thanks for joining me again for part 3 of our little effort to build a serverless search engine. And today we are building the, I can get to the IDE, we'll be building the spider service. So previously in the first two parts, the first part we looked at building a very basic query service that really all it was a Dynamodb table to store potential keyword matches. And to then make that available to API calls. Then we also built a very basic front end that was designed for very basic stuff. I mean, this is just a very simple. This should work still. Haven't changed anything. Yes? No? Maybe? Yeah, there we go. We got a basic response there. Get that a bit out the way. All right. So we have a very simple little search response here. So it matched this 3-word phrase to this URL, which is in our Dynamodb table, and displayed it on the page for us. So that was relatively simple first two sort of episodes, and the second one was focused on how you deal with front end. How do you deploy a front end build on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and so on. Cool. So the idea today is that we want to focus on building the spider. There's the part that's actually going to go and find websites and retrieve data out of them. And for anybody who doesn't know the project at hand, we're basically building a search engine, kind of like our own little mini Google. And the idea is that we're going to go through building these parts. I've done very little research, and that's kind of the point. It's like I'm looking at building a serverless app, this kind of serverless app for the first time. Let's see what this entails. Hello, Zaki, I'm guessing the name is. And along the way, if anybody is here and has any questions about what we're building or just serverless in general, this is meant to be a community effort where we kind of just chill, relax, build an app together, see what serverless looks like if you're building something. This is not a formal webinar or anything like that. Let's just have a bit of fun building an interesting little application. That's really the idea. Cool. So now that we've got kind of all that groundwork out the way, and just to reiterate, if you haven't seen the first two parts, they are on YouTube. There is a playlist, and this video will also be added to that playlist. So go ahead and you can go ahead and watch those later if you prefer. But right now, I'm going to get into just talking about how we're going to handle this search engine, the spider service, our little spider that's going to go out and scan HTML documents for us. And there's a few parts to this. The one part is that we need a place to store sites that we're going to visit. We essentially need a Dynamodb table with URLs to go visit. We also then need an engine that's going to scan the HTML from a website, and as well scrape the HTML from a website essentially. And then we need to also index that page to some degree. I mean, we're not going to do anything super fancy here. We're not using any fancy search tools in this case. That can be left up to, if you want to build this yourself and you want to go all out using awesome search tools. This could probably be done with those tools like an Algolia or a Elasticsearch or whatever tool you like. We're just going to use a very basic system, looking at an HTML document, pulling out some basic indexing information from it, and then sending that to our query service. So that's the other interesting part, is that our query service contains all the indexing information. So if we look at this query services serverless.yml file we created last week, you can see there's a keywords table here. And the idea with this keywords table is that it'll store up to 3-word combinations from a document that we index, so that you can search across those 3 words potentially. And there is a query function that lets us query those. It'll receive the search query, that serverless framework awesome that I just did in the client, and then run a query on our Dynamodb table for whatever matches, as you can see there. So today the focus is on helping build that index that the query service can search on, and that's what the spider service is going to do. It has to take a URL, scan it or scrape the HTML within it, and essentially it's going to pull out the anchors, the links to other sites, and then have those stored in DynamoDB for later. But then also pull out some content so that we can index it. And my plan is to keep it relatively simple. I'm really going to look at the H1, H2s, and H3s, and that's really what I'm going to stick to for now. You could obviously expand this out, but it's an interesting starting point so that you don't overwhelm with too much at a time. I'm going to get some basic stuff up and running so that you can just test things out and try things. And this is why I like working with serverless as well, because serverless gets very forgiving with this kind of working this way, and that you're just busy testing and playing around with things. You don't have infrastructure sitting around doing stuff constantly costing you tons of money. In fact, this has been this little search engine has been sitting there for the last few days, essentially doing nothing, which is great. It's not costing me any money. Right. So we want to get our Spider service up running. I am now in my IDE with the terminal, so I'm going to go to the Spider service folder. And in here now I want to create a brand new serverless service. So I'm going to, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to rm Spider service because I'm using the serverless command. The serverless command will help me bootstrap a new service and as well connect me to my Serverless Framework Pro account, which I need for deployment. I want to create a new project. It's going to be a Node.js project. This is going to be my Spider service, I'm going to call it. Project successfully created. It's now going to ask me to link to my Serverless Framework Pro account, which I'm logged into. So yes, I want to enable that. I've got a serverless search engine org, and then my search engine app. And that's it. I should now be set up. Awesome. So I can actually go to the Spider service and I should see here as well. I've got some files. Awesome. Let's go ahead and just move that out the way. I'm going to quickly add these to Git. Go. Open up my serverless YAML file. All right. So because of our bootstrap, I've got Spider service and app and org set. And if you're not familiar with app and org, it connects me to my Serverless Framework Pro account, which you can see we've already got the query service here. And there's a reason for that, because we're going to be using Studio, one of the new features in the Serverless Framework Pro, to help me with my development. It's a way to run my Lambda functions or test my Lambda functions locally while they're actually running in the cloud, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's just switch back to that. Okay, so I've got my basics set. I've got the generic handler here, and that's it. Right, so these are very generic things. I want to replace this, so I don't want... I'm going to use my own handler, and I'm going to also structure my folders differently. The same way we did the query service source functions and so on. So let me go ahead and do that quick. New directory. I'm going to call this src. Inside of that, I'm going to call that functions. And you can do whatever you like. That's the one advantage you've got. You can really do whatever you like in your folder structure or anything like that. Then I'm going to move that handler file into there. And then we're going to change this. So to start off with, the first thing we want let's think about how this is going to work. So we're going to need a cron, essentially, that's going to run X number of minutes or whatever to start scraping a site or sites if we decide to do a batch. I'm going to actually start with the scraper. So I'm going to call this scraper. And this is going to be spun up via SNS. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So the idea here is that I'm going to have a scraper that is going to be connected to SNS, and with SNS, my cron job is going to be the one that reads the DynamoDB table, gets the next page to scrape, and pushes that into SNS to trigger this asynchronously. And the reason I'm doing that is because that means that I can, at any time, I can just push data to SNS. If I decide to speed up how much I'm scraping, I can just make my cron job run more often. I can tweak my cron job to pull multiple records out at a time and then just push each one individually into an SNS. So I have parallel Lambda functions running. It's a nice way to control the sort of throughput of my scraping. If I just built a scraper that itself was the cron job, I'd need to go in here and edit the code constantly, which I don't necessarily want to do. I would like a scraper to be focused on just scraping a page. and have individual Lambda functions that can run in parallel on the same function itself. One of the powers of Lambda. Why not? Let's do that. So this scraper will then receive an object from SNS. So what we want to do is let's take a look at the SNS object. So AWS SNS event object. And there we go. So we're going to get a sample SNS object here. So we can now build, so this is what the event object will look like. It won't be JSON, it'll be actual object, but this just gives us an idea so we know what to look for in our event object. All right. And I'm probably not going to return this because this is going to be triggered by SNS. It's not going to be API gateway, so I don't need to return the status code. I'm just going to end up returning true probably, just so that SNS doesn't try and retry the scrape. And now I want to get the URL out that I'm going to be scraping. So this is going to be from, first of all, let's do an if event type of. Actually, this is coming from SNS. I don't need to worry about validating that. It's always going to be this object. So I just need to look for if event dot. Just want to make sure that it is an array before I query it as an array. So if it is an array and the event dot records, dot length is greater than 0. So there's at least one element in the array. So we can see records here is an array. I'm checking to see that it is an array before I, query it, assuming that it is. And then I want to, there should only ever be one messenger because we're going to be pushing one message at a time, but you never know. I'm actually going to stick to that. I'm going to just look for the first element of this records array. So wait, actually I want to do this the other way around. Okay, so my validation in the upfront needs to be if it's not an array, or if it's not greater than 0, I should then error out. So if not an array and less than or equal to 0, then it should error out. So return new error. Event object is, oh goodness, is not an array. There we go. Alright, so now I've handled my validation to that degree. So now I'm going to say const URL is equal to event.records 0, the first element, and then let's see, I go to SNS, and then I'll go to message, and this will probably be JSON itself message, so let's parse the JSON out of this, and then I need .url. Alrighty, so what this means is that I should be able to pull the URL out. So now what I want to do is I'm going to just log this out quickly, just to be sure that I get it. And now let's use Studio. I'm going to use Studio to help me make sure that I am testing this thing as I should be. Remove that a bit. Sound and video is out of sync. Oh, that's a shame. The preview seems to be okay. Could you try switching qualities, Zaki? It seems like the preview that YouTube gives me looks okay. Let me know how that goes. I'm just going to continue for this quickly. So what I'm doing is I'm using Studio. We want to use Studio as a feature of Serverless Framework Pro to help us debug and test and develop our new function. And by passing the Studio command here, what this does is oh, and this is not going to work. I just realized I need to define my new function inside my serverless.yml file first. So here, I'm going to change this to script. That's what I need to do. My handler is going to be in SOC functions. I'm going to say scraper. I need to go change the file name. All working. Then the actual function name itself is scraper, so that should be good. And I don't need to define an event yet because we just want to get this into the cloud and test this. We're not actually attaching an event at the moment. Okay, great to hear. All right, so let's just do an SLS Studio now. So what SLS Studio is going to do is it's essentially going to do a serverless deploy. So if you've used the serverless framework before, you should be familiar with the command serverless deploy. And this is going to deploy our small little service that we started working on into my AWS account via my serverless framework pro account here. And I'm actually going to open Studio already. And what this is going to do is then attach a listener to my Lambda functions. So when I make a change to a Lambda function and I save, it's automatic. It's going to push the changes to AWS, my AWS account, to the stack that was originally deployed within a few seconds. And then I can test my changes to my Lambda function, which makes that whole develop test loop nice and quick. The initial part of deploying the stack takes the usual minute or two for a serverless deploy. Nothing much I can do about that, at least initially. But this is a feature being developed by the serverless framework team, and it's very possible that this could change. This time taken to deploy here, at least initially, might improve. But already, even with this just means that I have to do this once. I start work on a new service, I do this serverless studio command, and I leave it like that for the rest of the day. It's not as big a deal anymore, as opposed to having to do a serverless deploy every time I change one character in my Lambda function, save, redeploy, and then find an error, and then make an edit, and then save, and then redeploy. This will help me develop a lot faster. I'm going to leave that to finish. So let's just take a look at what we're going to do now. So really the idea with what we've got here is I just want to make sure that I'm pulling the data out of the SNS object correctly. And I'm assuming that the event object is going to look exactly like, yes it is, like what we have in the browser here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this documentation. I want to take this JSON object and I want to actually generate a JSON to JavaScript object. I've done this before, as you might imagine. There we go. What I want to do is I want to convert this JSON into a JavaScript object that I can now send with Studio. Yeah, I can invoke. There's my JavaScript object. I want to edit this now so that this will be JSON here. And what this will be is going to be something like URL. Let's make this serverless.com. Okay, and close that. And that looks good. Alrighty. Let's see how this deployment is going. Send that test event. Now this is actually sending this event object to my Lambda function that we just deployed. Waiting to see. Here we go. It cannot read property length of undefined at module. Okay, so let's make things even simpler. We're going to get to see Studio redeploying now. I'm going to actually log out the event object as a whole so that I can see this. Oh no, I can see this, and now darn, the deployment failed briefly here. Oh no, there we go. See, it's uploaded my function already. Successfully updated, so I can now send it again. We just remove that log entry, move this up a bit so we can see more clearly. Give it a few seconds to run that. So let's see. Okay, it's adding new lines in, so we want to remove that. Okay. I don't want to have to itself. So here is definitely an optimization we can make to Studio to not pass these new lines through. Actually, this isn't a very big object, so this won't take terribly long, actually. So let's just quickly do this. Just bring it all to the same line, so we don't have this issue. And I think the plan is ultimately to add, just like we have, if you saw last week, we have actual HTTP events. If there was an HTTP event attached, you could actually do this with using that as the way to pass the data. So I think the idea is to do this with SNS2 and other events, so that you can just pick SNS, drop in the message that the SNS topic would be sent, so that it just sends the correct generic event object with the right custom data within it. There we go. I'm hoping this will work. I'm not sure if it is going to now, seeing how it passed that kind of as a string. Let's see. Send that. Yeah, it's sending as a string literal, so that's unfortunate. Alrighty, this just means that we need to send this as JSON, and then ultimately, now I can actually tell the team that we need to look at fixing this. But now we can actually test this by sending the event object as JSON and parsing it out, and just remembering to reverse that when we go live to test with an actual SNS event object. Ultimately, Studio should be corrected to make sure it doesn't do that in future, which is something that we need to make the team. That's why it's still in beta. There are going to be little issues here and there to deal with. So let's go ahead and make that change so that my event object is no longer that. I need to do a const event object is basically JSON parse event. Here we go. It's uploading that now. And then we want to take this one, drop it in there, and there, and there. Successfully updated. Let's save again. Right. Okay. Now, what I need to do as well is I need to replace this object with the actual JSON that I had before. So let's grab the JSON we already had. I'm actually going to grab, JSON within JSON is always fun. That out, place that. Change this now. So this is going to be a URL and actually I'm going to make this a full URL so we can make sure it's fully formed. And then close it. That looks like valid JSON within JSON. Yes. Okay. Let's send that test. Waiting for my invocation to respond. Syntax error, unexpected. FJS 424. Probably because this needs to be. No. Once again, I'm going to log out this. Give it a few seconds to redeploy. And as you can see, Studio is already printing out my errors here. So the errors that I get from my test are showing up here as well, so I can access them within my CLI too. Kind of useful. And let's go try it again. See what this logs out now. Sure, this is not a HTTP request though. That's the difference. That's what we need to do separately. So it looks like this is actually, wow. Okay. So, okay, so Studio is actually, and I wasn't told this, Studio has actually taken my JSON object and turned it into a JavaScript object for me. So I don't need to JSON parse. Okay, so that actually makes things a lot better. I can parse. I don't need this. And I can just use the event object as is. So let's just change that. Back again. So there we go. So yeah, the thing is this request is not HTTP request. I'm not connecting an HTTP API to this Lambda function. This is going to be an SNS object, and there won't be a content type associated with that because that's an internal call with AWS. What we're doing is we're using Studio as a way to proxy an SNS request. We're pretending to be SNS by building our own custom event object here. This is what the event object in your Lambda function will look like, just not JSON. It'll be an actual object. But this is what it will look like when SNS sends it to Lambda. That's what we're doing. We're testing to make sure that we can receive data from an SNS topic and parse it out and so on. So let's test that once again. Alrighty, there we go. Yes. So we pulled out our URL now. All right, so that's one step in the right direction. Cool. Nice to know that this happened. So let's just do URL test. I can save this event so I can continue to use this later or in future. It's going to save that as a test for me to use. Awesome, we set up in there. All right. So now that we have that section kind of solved for us, we need to take it the next step. We need to actually start some scraping here. The idea with the scraper, I've actually gotten, I did some very minimal research ahead of time. No, SNS won't. But like I said, Studio, thankfully, it seems Studio will take JSON that I put here as my event object and turn that into the JavaScript object I need. So hey, all good. Anyway, I did find an article. I did some very basic research this morning, finding an example of building a very simple web scraper. I like the idea that I don't need to rethink this thing from scratch. People have done this before. And here's a pretty interesting way to do it, I think. And ultimately, this ends up using a node module called Cheerio, which essentially seems to take HTML and make it accessible via jQuery style accesses, like just $H2, and you can get the H2s out. And that seems like a nice, easy way to access the DOM elements that we're looking for when we retrieve a web page. And it also uses axios to just yank the data out. So that's also pretty cool. So I thought we would just use that, and I'm going to install Axios and Cheerio in my application. So let's go back to the IDE here, go to my Spider service, and let's do an npm i -- save Axios and Cheerio. Install those two packages. That's great. Then I'm going to add them in here now. So Cheerio is require Cheerio, and I need Axios, which is equal to require Axios. Okay. And now we have a URL, so I'm going to, this is async await, so I'm going to say const page is equal to await Axios. You can just drop a URL in, right? Alrighty. Axios and the URL. Great. So now we have a page. And then in that page, I want to get, let's see, clicks is equal to how do you use a Cheerio? So Cheerio you need to load. Okay, so I'm going to do that with my page. That's all good. That means I can now do a $. Just $. You know, $H2. I want to find the A, so I'm just going to say $A. Fix my typo. And let's just, I'm going to just log this out as well. Let's just log out links so you can see what that is. I've saved it. An update. Give it a few seconds to upload. Oh, hang on, I just think it didn't see the change. There we go. Redeploying now. Seconds. Okay. I'll go back to Studio. I'm going to clear this out. I have my serverless.com URL going through. Let's send that. See what happens. And again, if anybody joining, if you have any questions, or it doesn't have to be about what we're building, it could be any questions, even about serverless in general. If you are building your own project and want to know something, feel free. This is a relaxed community chat. We are just hanging back, doing some serverless stuff, and trying some interesting projects out while we do that. All right, so what this is. What is this logged out here? I logged links. I've got the event object is there, and then I'll log here. Actually, I tend to prefer to do this, and I haven't been doing it on the stream, just to be clear. But I actually like to preface with a string, just so I know that the content that follows is that variable that I was logging out. Give it a just an easy way to reference it. Okay, so that's updated. Let's clear that one. It's in test. Oh, is it because this is no. Seems that this is synchronous already. Let's go take a look at cheerio. Cheerio.load. Yeah, it's let's actually take it one step back. Let's log out the page so that I can see that I've gotten the actual page itself as well. Into the cloud. Maybe don't have external access from a laptop. Could be interesting. Well, it should. I've been able to make HTTP requests out. I don't see why that would be different. All right, so let's go take a look. Clear this. Request. Okay. Now it's only giving me the log of this. That's my. Oh, there's the error. Source property valid JSON. That come from? All right, so this looks like there's an error happening somewhere there. So let's go take a look a bit more detail. So I'm going to use Serverless Framework Pro just to take a look at the actual error message that came from that. Let me just load that up. Interesting. Seems there was another to Spider service. The dev stack, which is what we're working on, has errors. Error. The most recent one here. So let's go type error. Really? But it's been working all along. Got the URL. I make some change to this. Yeah. Try it again. Running on the same error. It must be a valid JSON. It's not a valid JSON object. It has been. I haven't changed this. Fat finger something. Validate our JSON quickly. Valid. Okay. Nothing wrong with my JSON. Let's go take a look again at these errors. So let's take a look. Event object here. This is the event object that we actually pass. There it is. It's an array. Okay. So used by seems that it's being. I need to but it's not an it needs to be an or first of all, so that and it's going there. Now been working all along. Okay. Yeah. Seems to, and I have no idea why, because not is an records. Okay. I'm going to put length can I am thinking there might be something happening with the communication here. So we're going to take a step back and actually do the SNS function quickly. We have a way to send the data that we need. So what I'm going to do is let's go back then to looking at our serverless.yml file. Let's add a new function here called start scraping. Not crapping. Scraping, thank you. Let's do a handler of src functions start scraping. Okay, and then this is going to have an event of schedule. And I can never remember how they're fully defined. So let's go find the documentation quick. In serverless.com. Thanks, Zeki. The trigger is asking, do you need to parse the event object to an array? The event object is coming from SNS, and SNS has a very specific structure. So if I go to the documentation here, this is from AWS. This is the event object that Lambda function receives from an SNS event. So you don't necessarily need to parse it. It should come. The event object is a JavaScript object. I'm passing it through Studio as a JSON string. Studio is turning it into the JavaScript object I need. That's why we see here when I log it out, you can see this is a JavaScript object here. This isn't a JSON string because Studio's already parsed it out. And it was working before, not so long ago. So yeah, I'm not sure entirely why it's done that. Yeah, so and thanks for the link in serverless contributors. I wasn't really looking at that because there's quite a lot going on when there's a stream. But thanks, Zeki. And if I am pronouncing your name wrong, feel free to correct me. I know what that's like with a name like mine as well. So, yeah. So right now, what I'm assuming is going on is that with Studio being in beta and still some work needing, that it's not actually passing the event object in the right way, in the right format, so that my Lambda function that's trying to read that event object is having some trouble parsing it out, getting what it needs out of it. I'm not entirely sure why, because it looks like it's actually correct here based on what I've logged out, but be that as it may. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to go take a step forward and build the other portion of the service that we need that's going to send the URL to the scraper itself via SNS. And anybody in chat, by the way, there is about a 1 minute delay built into, or latency built into the stream. That's just how YouTube is. So yeah, if I seem to take a long time to answer, that's really the reason why. All right. What I'm going to do is I want the start scraping function to execute on a timescale. So we're just going to go to serverless.com and remind ourselves how doing a schedule event looks. So schedule on AWS. I never remember the formats of these things. There's just too much to memorize here. So I know we don't use cron jobs a lot. I'm going to pick rate. Rate is the easy one. And this just means that it's going to do every 2 hours, but I can do this every 1 hour. And if I remember correctly, this actually used to be a string. That is something different. And if I, and with this now, okay, so we have this event that's going to trigger, but I'm not going to do this. All right, so I'm not going to create the Dynamodb table yet. That is, well, that's the thing. I was seeing the error as well. The error was being logged into Serverless Framework Pro, where it was trying to do a dot length on something that it said wasn't an array, which I was even logging out the. Actually, let me do that. Actually, let's do a. Let's log out event records, and let's actually do this. Let's make a type. Let's do a type of. Let's see what type this actually is when it's executing. I'm going to preface this with the string so that I know what it is. Looks like our watch has closed. Right, so I'm going to Serverless Studio again. Let's just spin that up and get things started again. That's also going to push our. Actually, that's going to cause an error because I have this function created as defined but not created. So let's just create the file .js, and I'm going to just do a very basic function on this very quickly. should work. This is the studio, so let's redeploy that. Yeah, so like I was trying to say, I do have, this is where the error was happening. And I could see that because Solus Framework Pro caught the error for me. So here I've got the error messages here, so I don't really need the try-catch block. I can see there's an error here that it doesn't like that. Cannot read property length of undefined. And it's, so basically records looks undefined, which is bizarre to me because I log out event. And I see that there's a property called records on the event object. But this is programming for you. You have these funny issues, and then you're going to slap your head later when you realize you've messed up. Hey, that's how it works. Do that. Go back here. Let's see. This did not like what I did. Not like mine. What did I? Oh, I was wrong to put that in a. There we go. Let's do studio again. Let's start the deployment. I'll just sit and watch it this time to make sure that it goes through correctly. Actually, it doesn't really matter if we have the schedule or not, because we can just manually execute the start scraping. We're going to add a call to SNS to test. I mean, I don't know why I even put the schedule in. Let's do that while it's deploying. Let's add our code in here. So really what we want is we need a, first of all, we need to, AWS is equal to require AWS SDK. I want an SNS object is equal to new AWS.SNS. Oops. And then let's go look at some SNS docs. There we go. And so we want to send a message. Publish. There it is. So now we can see what our object, our call should look like. And it really is as simple as passing the message and the topic ARN. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's do a const message params is going to be topic ARN. We're going to make this a this topic. I'm going to make this a bit more verbose. What this is, SNS scrape page topic. So I'm going to add that environment variable in a minute, and then the message. We're going to hardcode this for now for testing purposes, but it's going to be json.stringify URL serverless.com. Let's make this more complete. And that should do it. So now we're going to do a try catch of that. SNS error, where I'm going to say log there was an error using SNS. Change it to how you want it. And then I'm going to have SNS error here. And then I need to log out this param so that I can debug it if I need to. And then I'm going to return new. Well, actually, I'm just going to return the SNS error as well. And in my try, I now can do a SNS dot await SNS dot publish, and this is going to be my message params and a promise. Okay, that should do it. I love how quick and easy this is. So yeah, just created that object. I trying the publish. If it fails, it does this. Otherwise, it's going to return true. Marks it as success. And this deploy didn't like what happened. Yeah. Right, let's take a look at the docs here. I'm going to choose an alternate way to specify this rate. All right, so I'm going to do that instead. And also need to add my SNS topic, so good thing I came back here. Yeah, I've already got rate set. I think it might be because this needs to be text. Let's do that. Okay. Quickly. Just opening up a known working example so that I can make sure that I'm setting those rates correctly. You know what? I think we're going to do, yeah, rate to work. All right, let's do it this way instead. I can actually set it that way. And I'm also going to 1 hour, and then I'm going to say enabled true. Oops. Right, so that should work, but I also need to add my SNS topic. So with serverless, I can also add other AWS infrastructure that I might need, like SNS topics. Actually, I'm not going to add it there because I can add my event. So if I add an event, events to this, and I call this SNS, and I give it a topic name. So this is going to be serverless. Let's call this SSE for serverless search engine. Scrape page topic. This will now deploy. This will actually go in. The serverless framework will create this SNS topic for me. It's pretty cool, but I don't want to just name this like this. I want to actually namespace this with the stage that I'm deploying to and the service that I'm, just in case I happen to go along and create a topic with the same name. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and add self-service. So this is a variable that's now going to grab my service name from up here, whatever it might be, and add it in here. So it's a nice, easy way to reference that. And let's close this off with opt stage. So if I pass the stage in my, when I run my deploy command, it's going to pass that in here, or a default of dev. So if there is no stage pass, it's going to default to dev. That should set the event correctly. So let's try this deploy again. Studio. This should work now. Watch it deploy. And any questions, feel free to ask, folks. Yeah, thanks. Okay, I just saw I did fix that. I realized I was in plural there. I guess I could have just made it 2 hours, like whatever. But we got there in the end. Watching that. Alrighty. This looks a lot better already. Loading. I believe it was erroring out very quickly once it started, waiting for update to. Actually, it errored out before that. Awesome. So we've gone past those sort of syntax errors in my serverless.yml. Okay. So this should help us a bunch because now we're going to have the actual SNS object being pushed at the actual Lambda function, which I guess is a better way to test anyway, because you want those actual objects, that actual infrastructure sitting in the back end, sending the right data. So we just wait for this to update, and then we can go to Studio and actually just execute this the start scraping Lambda function. And just to reiterate, this is basically just sending this hard-coded event. What we're going to do, we're going to come back to this once we get the link between the two working. We're going to come back to this and then add a query into Dynamodb to get the next item that needs to be scraped. There we go. As you notice, I'm requiring AWS here, but I don't need to actually install the Node module because the AWS SDK is available by default in Lambda. Usually I actually do include it as a dev dependency just so that my IDE can complete it, and it's there anyway for anybody who runs any kind of local execution of Lambda functions, so it is available. But because we're using Studio and we're actually testing in the cloud, which in my opinion is a better way to do things if you can, because it's far more accurate with the result of your tests, that means I can now I can leave that out. I don't need to actually include that as one of my JSON modules. Okay, so we're waiting for it to watch. Actually, we could probably go ahead and test this already. So we go back to Studio, and I have my start scraping function is here. This needs no event data, so I can just trigger this. We don't use the event object at all. Let's just send that and see what that looks like. That has SNS error. So there was a problem. There was something we did wrong. Oh, obviously we haven't set our environment variable. Yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. We need this SNS scrape page topic environment variable set. We go to our serverless.yml file, find the environment. I like to keep to using the commented out sections where it says environment because then people know where to expect things. You feel free to do as you wish. I'm going to add this ARN. So this is going to be, and we're going to end up using a serverless plugin here to help with this. But what this is going to look like is ARN. Let me actually see, does this give me the SN object? So doesn't. What that means is I'm going to have to just off camera quickly go to AWS and look at my ARN. I'd like to normally just look at the ARNs of infrastructure that I've spun up like this, just so I can make sure I know what the structure looks like properly. But ultimately what it is going to be ARN, AWS, SNS, AWS region. And if you're wondering about that syntax, I'll talk about that in a sec. That's related to a plugin we're going to be using. AWS AccountId. Close that. And then there's going to be something about topic and so on. So let me just go to SNS and look at the ARNs of SNS topics. I just like to make sure I get the format correct because the ARNs are tricky in that their formats change depending on which service you're using and so on. If it's a topic, if it's a stream, if it's anything else. So it looks like it's just the topic name. Okay, great. That means that after my account ID, I can just go grab my topic name, which is going to be this here. And now I want to resolve these specific items. So I'm going to go back to my terminal. And I want to do so I want to go to my Spider service, and I'm going to do a serverless plugin install -- name of the plugin I want to install, serverless pseudo parameters. And this is a plugin I like to use because I don't like the parameter syntax with these AWS resources. It's annoying to me to do these fn join things and so on. This plugin just does it for you. You just put in the resource name or even like account and region parameters, and it'll just fill those in every time you deploy, which is pretty handy. And now it looks like SLS Studio died on us here because I closed the browser, but that's fine. I need to redeploy anyway to get this environment variable set. So now we have the environment variable set. Let's do the deployment. And that means it'll be available to us now while we're editing. We're going to let that deploy. Thanks, Don. That's nice to hear. Hope folks are finding it useful. So yeah, it's like I don't like ref variables. Ref variables are, the syntax is a bit funny in YAML and in the serverless.yml file itself as well. I have had back and forth issues with it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Your mileage may vary. You might have had a fantastic time with them and love using them. I don't see any problem in using a plugin like this to help you do these kinds of things, because these types of plugins only operate on deployment time. So it's not actually going to affect the actual running of your Lambda functions in code or in production and so on. This is purely at deployment time, so it really doesn't make any difference to me. So yeah, I really do enjoy, I prefer using these plugins to help me get stuff done than necessarily worrying about trying to use the sort of default best syntax that you typically should use. Yeah, and convenience things, why not? And the additional time, especially for this on deployment, is negligible, and it adds a few microseconds, if that. It's literally just taking that syntax and replacing it with the actual account ID and region. And obviously, it's a way for you to not have to hardcode things, whatever. But it also, that specific plugin does more than just account ID and region. You can reference in your resources section. You can reference, and I don't have one here yet, but you could reference, for example, this S3 bucket here, if this was available, as hash new resource, and it would put in the hash new resource.arn. It'll put in the ARN of the resource you created, and so on. So it's a very nice, clean way of doing these things without that FN syntax, which I really don't like. All right, so that's deployed. Let's go take a look in Studio again, and if I test, take a look. Okay. Okay. Yeah. These things that I always forget that I need to give my Lambda function permissions. That's actually a really nice, it's a good thing about Lambda functions, actually. What's happened is that my Lambda function is trying to talk to SNS, but Lambda functions by default don't have access to anything. They have no permissions to do anything in your AWS account until you explicitly give it to them. And that's what I'm doing here now. I'm going to be adding IAM role permissions, and I love the fact that we have this example here. This always helps me out in remembering the syntax, because again, I hate remembering these things. I like to look at references to make sure I get things right. But the great thing, actually, to be perfectly honest, the best way to build these things is to not set the permissions up front. You want to actually see the error message, because the error message is going to give you the exact permissions that you need on the exact resource that it's trying to access. So you can be very explicit about your specific permissions that you're giving. So what I mean by that is, if I go back here and I've actually closed it, so we just send it again. Let's get that error message back up, because it's going to tell me that it doesn't have permissions to do X action on Y resource, which is exactly what you want. You want to know that, for example, authorization error. So this is my user, so that I don't need to worry about, or the user of the Lambda function that is executing, the user that's executing the Lambda function. SNS publish. So there we go. Now I know SNS publish is the action that I need to give access to. And this is actually going to be SNS, so that's just a small correction I need to make there. And now I can tell it to do it on a very specific resource, which is what I want. So let's go take a look. Let's grab the resource. It is this resource here, all the way to there. And once again, I can now replace things like an account ID with this, because that's what the pseudo parameters plugin is going to do. And I can replace this region with the right region. Of course, I could hardcode it if I want to make sure that I only allow for specific regions. I could hardcode that, but you could also use safeguards in Serverless Framework Pro. If you need to limit things by regions, you can use that to help make sure that deployments always happen to the right region. But right now we've got this resource set to the right one. That should all be good. Yeah, now I have my permissions. Let's save that. And this is the other thing about Studio, is that we actually want it to redeploy if we have a serverless.yml change. So that is something we need to bring up. Let's just do the Studio again. So now we can deploy our permissions that we set in our serverless.yml file. That's the one downside. Anytime I make a serverless.yml file change, I need to redeploy the stack into the cloud. But yeah, now I know I've given all the permissions that Lambda needs and only that. And this might seem like a slow process because the downside, of course, is that as soon as it hits one permission error, it's going to stop execution entirely. And then it's going to, and then you have to fix that. You have to add the right permissions. And then if it hits another one, it's going to stop again. Be that as it may, that is the way that you can build highly secure Lambda functions with only with limited access to only the resources and actions that they actually need. So yeah, security-wise, it's a great pattern to have. So if anybody who's come along and doesn't know what's happening, we are building a serverless application from scratch with very little research. Just had an idea about something to build potentially, and we've got an error. Something went wrong in serverless.yml file. To take a look. And if anybody, if you have questions, if you want anything, that's why. If you have any questions about serverless, about the serverless framework, it doesn't have to be related to this project. Feel free to ask. This is all about sitting and chatting with the community to just chew the fat a bit while we build an interesting-ish project. Right, so we are redeploying. And my mistake there, I just had a typo. I didn't put the double code on here for the account ID. Actually going to close that up a bit because we don't really need that. Okay. Just need to check something while we wait. Right, it looks like this is working as intended now. The deployment is working as we want. Yeah, now it's okay. So like update progress. Yeah. I'm wondering, while we do that, let's take a look at our Dynamodb table we're going to use. Let's take updates. It was better than I was expecting. Alrighty, now that's finished. It's going to start watching our Lambda function again. And let's go test that out again. So start scraping. Okay, we don't have an error. The response is this is actually a studio response. That's because I'm sending back a true value. That means that this should have actually executed our scraper. So because we didn't actually invoke the scraper via Studio, we probably need to go look through the monitoring side of Serverless from a Pro. My Spider service here. I'm going to take a look for scraper. This should have an event that would have triggered relatively recently. It is now 13:08 on my side. Waiting for all the data from CloudWatch to come through. It looks like this actually executed without error here now. Oh boy. And yeah, okay, we can actually see. Serverless from a Pro is showing me that it actually made a request, HTTP request to serverless.com to retrieve the data. Nice. So we did get the right data out. Nice. It's working. Okay. Studio again. See if we get logs of. Okay. Right, so if I go back to my search engine here, let's look at this specific function. Scraper has 11 entries. And yeah, we obviously with being COVID and stuff, people are working from home, including my kids. So we might hear the noise of children in the background. Okay, so I'm seeing that we have serverless.com. Let's actually do this, send this test again in, let's get that out, send that object. See if we get the same error as last time. Wish there was ones. Okay, that's the start scraping errors. Okay. That's seems like it's taken a minute or two for the data to come through. So there is. It's just not sorted by data time. There we go. There is the successful start scraping request that we sent. They publish SNS. So it's sending to SNS. Awesome. Now I need to the one. So let's go back. Have sent to this doesn't seem to be sending the data through to scraper correctly. We sort by time, date time. Yeah, for some reason my function connected to SNS is not receiving that message. So looks like I need to look elsewhere for that. So go here, this. Let me actually log out the result of that publish so that I can see it. I go to my start scraping. Instead of just awaiting there, let's do a let const result equal, and then let's log the result of my SNS publish, which looked like it was successful, but who knows. And let me just make sure that my serverless.yml here is set up correctly. It should giving events from SNS here. I'm just going to look into my AWS account here to be sure. So now I can look into, this is why you want to test in the cloud as well, so you can make sure that these things are connected, do work as intended, and so on. I just want to see that the Lambda function is actually connected to the SNS object as I need. And now it wants me to begin. And look at Lambda. So I'm not showing this on screen, but this is my AWS account, so I don't necessarily want to share this. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to the Lambda service inside the AWS console, and I'm going to go find this scraper function that I've created here. It's been deployed. And modified. I want that function there. So what has happened is it does have SNS connected. It says it's enabled, but it's not. I don't. Yeah. Not being triggered by SNS for some reason. So I've actually found the error. I'm looking in CloudWatch now, and it's saying that it cannot find a module cheerio. Share this now. Basically, telling me is it cannot find module cheerio for some reason, even though I installed it. So let's go back to our code inside our scraper here. This should my package JSON doesn't have it. Oh, why not? Okay, so there's obviously something wrong there. So let's yeah, go to my Spider service, and then I'm going to do an npm install save cheerio and axios as well. Why didn't you save? Just bizarre. Now, if I open up, yeah, now it's saved. That blows my mind a little bit. I had that saved before without a problem. Okay. So that means that I can now go back to scraper here. Let's just do that. Is he redeploying now? Updated the function. Okay. So now if I go back to Studio, I should be able to run this test. Okay, there we go. Wow. Okay, so we've gotten something else out. And if I run my start scraping, this should now send the SNS object as well correctly. New invocation, so that's all good. And now it doesn't like topic ARN. Doesn't like the ARN I sent. All right, so we'll look at that in a sec. Let's look at our scraper here. That test, send that test. Let's do another one quick. And then I'm going to look at. Yeah, I did install them. I actually did run an npm install -- save on cheerio and things, but hey, now they are installed. Looking good. Let's go take a look at the actual scraper. So we've logged out page and we've logged out links, but it looks like there's something else. Did it actually show me all of that? Oh, we did a type of event records object. That's good. And then it stopped again. So again, we had this problem with something being sent via here. Right, so we need to fix our scraper. I don't know why it's giving me this funny business with the ARN. To take a look at our serverless.yml here. We have again. Invalid parameter, topic ARN. AWS ARN must begin with ARN null, not ARN AWS. Is it because it's now... Yeah. I'm going to just break this and do a generic deploy. Actually, I'm going to do a studio because that does do a regular deploy. I feel like my dependencies are not being pushed correctly. And this the plugin isn't actually able to run properly. In other words, it's not able to use my pseudo parameters plugin here for some reason. Okay, debugging, always a fun time. Sec. I was expecting this part 3, when we were looking at building our spider service, to be the trickier one. Mostly because it's involving sort of what's it for less obvious use cases like scraping, HTML pages and so on. Okay, so that should have deployed everything correctly, because we would have gotten an error about those hashes and so on. So let's try once again, because it was running fine before. Date here. Rather, execute again. Oh, you know what the problem is? Get this. The environment variables here, this needs to actually be like that. Or rather, I'm trying to remember correctly now. Whether it can. That's a difficulty with trying to mix, refs with AWS and other variables and so on. I'm going to take a look here. Yeah, I've never had a problem with that in the past. Okay. So, she shouldn't be necessary. Did I accidentally remove plugin? No, still there. Let's do SMS package here. Rather, actually, SMS print. Give me what. Should show me the YAML file once it's fully resolved. See, yeah, it's doing that. That's why. Actually, my plugin's not working, which is a little annoying. That should make a difference. AccountId Studio again. Okay, otherwise let's go here. see what the alternate syntax is, because I don't like, see, I don't like this. This is why I don't really enjoy these FN ref situations. They're always icky to me that way. I know there is recently been, I see even someone else is recommending the serverless pseudo parameters plugin, which is what I'm trying to use. Give me funny issues. But I know there is, so I could potentially just do that. This is why I avoid the rest, because you can't just use them like that. You have to do silly FN join syntax like this, which I dislike entirely. But maybe I should just use. I find it bizarre. It looks like, yeah, I like doing that. Let's go to spider. Let's print. Actually, this won't resolve it because doing a deploy. It's actually not accurate. Okay. Close that. Let's go execute Studio again. Let's see if that's helped solve the problem. Sent. Doesn't like it. Alrighty, so I'm going to have to switch back to using that syntax I don't like. Let's go ahead and grab this as an example, drop this into our serverless.yml file. Really? Okay. Thanks for that information. It looks like that's the odd thing is last week we actually used pseudo parameters plugin without a single issue. But yeah, so let's go ahead and just correct that. So I'm going to paste this over here. Grab this in front. And then let's make it match. So this is going to be SNS. That's fine. And on this. Name here. Have incorporate this syntax, which is going to be fun. I could just do that actually. I need to go look. I cannot just use this. I have to incorporate variables. So I guess one way to see if we can find something a bit more. Pseudo parameters here. Hey, in the serverless forum, take a look. Yeah, let's actually try this. I've seen this. This is what I was looking for before. I'm going to go back to my code and actually set these up ahead of time so that they're available. Set up custom. Wait, do I have custom? Let's go custom. Let's do AWS account ID and let's do AWS region. And that should then, we can then use those. So if I come back here, I can remove this line and just switch these out to be self custom dot AWS region. Oh, come on. Typing is hard sometimes. And then, hold on, actually, I think I just realized. No, okay, I didn't have that error. I thought I had a different error there for a second. And then I can just take this, copy it over. Yeah, that's what I'm trying that now, Zaki. And make this. Now, so the thing is, you cannot do that exclamation ref directly inline, which is why I'm going to do it this way instead. So that's right. And then we do the same thing over here. Let me just place this. And normally when I'm developing by myself, if I'm not broadcasting out, I'm not going to have my font this big. I do this now so that folks watching can see. Yeah, and this is actually a bad way to specify this resource. That's too hard coded, so I'm actually going to click and correct it while we're here. Grab this variable syntax rather and put that in as the resource. That's much better. So hopefully that should work. And now I'll go back to my terminal, SMS Studio, and then if this works, I can just remove the plugin. But that pseudoparameters plugin does more. Oh, it doesn't. And you find that works reliably, Zaki, because I've had problems like I'm having now with using ref resource name not resolving, like this isn't doing right now. Disgusting. Come up with that idea. And I've used this variable syntax format before as well. That. Okay. So there's one way around this, and this is one thing that you don't do when you're going into production. But for now, I want to get stuff working. We can worry about sorting this out later. So I'm actually going to do provider.region. I'm going to say the region here is US East 1. That is where we're deploying to. And then I'm going to set my account ID to the wildcard. Yeah, so you can do that. Get past this for now. We can come back and solve this problem a bit later. Instead of wasting time stream trying to fix a problem that I've solved a million times before and for some reason should be working now. All right. That's the only place that I need that. Right. Okay. So let's do it again. Deploy. Yep. I've always used the pseudo parameters plugin because it just simplifies that problem a bunch. It just automatically replaces whatever I have there. For some reason, it's not working today, and I'm not going to stick around trying to figure that out. Let's just get this thing working and deployed. I'm going to wildcard that account ID for now, and then ultimately you can sort that out later. In my opinion, having the account ID wildcarded isn't even that massive of a security issue because ultimately I only have access to AWS accounts that I have access to. I don't have, no matter what ID I put in there, I just don't suddenly have access to those account IDs. The biggest reason to have the account ID explicitly is also just to prevent almost those cross deployment issues where you might accidentally deploy into an environment you shouldn't. So by having some more sort of strict account ID setting there, it helps with that. Security wise, I honestly don't see it as being as big a security issue. Yeah, because your access to AWS accounts are controlled anyway. Alrighty, so let's get past this funny error. And it's weird how this error has only popped up now. We've been using pseudo parameters actually fine most of the day, and now it's causing us the issue. Alrighty, so we've successfully deployed. Let's go back to testing our scraper here. We should have cleared the logs, but let's just close this invitation, take a look at this one. All right, so now we have a different one, invalid namespace. Topic ARN. Oh, I cannot actually do that. I do need, for the ARN, I actually need this. Okay. Actually cannot do star, yeah. I obviously need topic ARN. Yeah. So stymied again. Okay. So I'm going to try to get past this, and then I think that'll, after we do that, that's going to probably be the end of today's stream. I'm going to have to do a fourth session to continue just wrapping up the last bits of our serverless project here. I might spend some time just figuring out why this is giving me issues with the pseudo parameters plugin. Like I said, I use this on production applications right now, and it works fine. I've been referencing them off to the side. But let's take a look how else I can get my account ID here. So let me try that custom parameter again. And let's do account ID. Let's use ref AWS account ID. I just want close that. Go back and take a ref account ID. Okay, so actually this is not right. This wouldn't work. According to John here. I'm going. Okay, let's try. I have used this before. So variable syntax means that you can actually apply, and this sits at the provider level. Okay, so in provider here, I'm going to add a variable syntax string, and this will essentially allow the conversion of AWS parameters using that dollar syntax to work. So for example, I can use like fn sub, and if you hear my kids, I'm sorry. We can use fn sub to do like, yeah, is where we really need it. So SNS scrape page topic fn sub, and this is going to be SNS and what this. Topic filter to be that. Then I can comment this out at least. Remove that. We don't need. That's actually going to cause an issue. Let's rather do with that. Okay. If anybody who's watching, we're building a serverless application from scratch with sort of basically zero preparation. Just trying to, I think that might work. So let's just do a, I don't know. Oh, the downside is that all of them become that. Okay. That means I have to do something. Where else that I'm using that I need to change. Another one I need to change. And if you are here watching and you have any questions around serverless, feel free to ask. This isn't just about what I'm building on the screen. If you have a project you're working on or a question about the framework or serverless in general, anything like that, this is meant to be a time for the community and me to chat and ask questions about things and so on and so on. So feel free. Just ask your question away in the chat. And I'm going to studio it up again. See that boy? Don't know if this fn sub is actually do what I think it's going to do. What happens there? I don't even need these. And it's once this deployment finishes, if this works or not, yeah, I think we'll call it there after I test this out to see if this works. This is all because the serverless pseudo parameters plugin that I've used for a long time just doesn't seem to be replacing the region and account ID values like I expected to. No idea why. So now we're trying a few other techniques that allow us to set these account ID and region variables for AWS. And in fact, I'm going to quickly go take a look in my Lambda function here and see if this has updated as I expect. The environment variable itself. Let's go take a look at the configuration. I don't have it on screen right now just because this is looking into my own AWS account. So sorry for that, folks. But it looks like tags, environment variables. Interesting. It has resolved the stage and the service name here in environment variable, but not those AWS variables. So I'm going to just check to see if this is because of Studio. Maybe this is something else that's happening with the framework, not substituting values I'm expecting. Okay. So I'm also just checking if there's any comments out in our serverless contributor Slack. So if you are watching and you want to find a community of people involved in serverless and the serverless framework, if you go to serverless.com/Slack, that'll get you to a page where you can sign up for access to the serverless contributors Slack workspace, which is where our community is. A few thousand people registered on there. If you have questions or want to contribute to the community and speak to folks, go for it. We also have forum.serverless.com. You want to ask questions there to a community. Again, we have a few thousand people registered for that. Now with that deploy out the way, I'm going to refresh my Lambda page here. I'm actually going to show this. Yeah. We can see I've got my Spider service here and there's an environment variable. Yeah, and you can see it's not replacing that. So what I think may be happening, I think this because of those. Maybe because of the double quotes at the end here. So let's, yeah, this is part of the problem. So let's do single quotes around there. I'm going to remove this. I'm actually going to make this self custom.stage. Then I'm going custom section here and say stage is equal to opt stage with the default of dev, so I don't need to do it down there. And this needs to be double because of our variable syntax. Good. Yeah. And that should help. Let's try that again. FN on the next line. So this is an environment variable. I don't want to make this an array. I see the F1 on the next line on this example, but this is an array of resources here. So you're saying that this is a property like this. Actually, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay. So like this, basically. All right. I will wait for it to deploy and then I'll try again. I'm hoping that might work. Yeah, YAML. YAML. YAML in general, just YAML. YAML. It's like, what do you YAML is nice and convenient for its brevity. You could switch to JSON, but holy moly, brackets and commas. Not the biggest fan of that. Let's just actually take a look at this environment variable in my Lambda function in AWS itself. Let's see if that has changed its value at all. Refreshing. Or run another deploy, because maybe it's fixed. I don't know. No, it's not. All right, so deploy again. And let's see this fn sub syntax here working. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't quite understand that this was actually trying to do another property to this, which would ultimately mean that this gets replaced by text. So then it would be the value of the environment variable. So that makes sense. Alrighty. Get that sorted, and then alrighty. Again, one more time for anybody who is arriving now and doesn't understand, if you have come along because you're interested in serverless stuff and had questions of your own, feel free to ask. This is not just about what I'm doing on the screen right now. What I'm doing on screen is kind of a gap filler in case people had questions or wanted to contribute stuff or what have you. So if you have some information you want to know about serverless and so on, go for it. I'm just building something on the side because it's interesting. And take a look at my environment variable. Hey, well, what do you know? The syntax worked. Now I have the correct values. So that is going the right way. So I'm actually going to take this, and in my resources here, I can now do that. That's actually a cleaner way of doing it. And with the variable syntax, it just means that this all becomes a lot cleaner. So there's something interesting for anybody to bear in mind. With variable syntax here, this means that I can mix AWS and serverless variables together at the same time. Pretty nice way of doing it. I have used this before in the past. It's just I always need to remember what the variable syntax looks like. Potentially go find that. I'm not a regex expert by any means, but really all this is doing is replacing, is making it so that single curly braces here work, but which means that you have to make double curly braces so that the serverless framework can work, essentially. But that's nice to see. Okay, so if I deploy it one more time, and this time I'm going to use Studio so we can turn the watching on as well. Yeah, starting Studio deploy. Yay! Debugging applications is always a fun time. All right. It actually means I could get rid of this. Don't need that anymore. I could clean things up a little bit. I'll do that later. I could actually remove this as well. I don't need to specify the region because putting the region here doesn't just impact my variables that I might need region in. It also impacts if I just run a deploy command. By default, it's going to use US East 1 now, when I might not want that. So rather than explicitly setting the region inside my YAML file, I set that in my deployment command or elsewhere. The stack update should be pretty quick. And then I can go and run a test command in Studio. Let's just open that up. As if anybody around who hasn't seen this, Studio is a way for you to test serverless functions in the cloud directly, so that you don't have to try and worry about doing things, deploying, waiting 2 minutes for a deploy, running a test, editing one line in your code, and so on. It's a nice way to do edit, test directly in the cloud, where things actually matter. You've got the actual accurate cloud infrastructure to test on. Just waiting for this to tell me it's watching. Actually, I can run this now. Let's run that test. And if it doesn't work now, we are going to leave this until tomorrow, where I will stream a continuation of this. Fortunately, we have a response. And this is now the log coming from our scraper. Here we can see, here is my successful SNS response, and the scraper is, okay, so SNS is not receiving the correct response that it needs. That's what that means. Let's take a look at what it is. Object. Yes, we didn't send an event object. That's why event looks undefined here. But if I go to my invocation, I can see the scraper object here is getting this object, which has got a message in SNS of serverless.com. So there's my event object. Response there as well is expected. Stopped. Great, it's working as I intend. Yippee! Oh, this is probably actually, it's running now because this is my cron running. I bet. Yeah, here we go. So because this is a scheduled event, the schedule ran. I ran it manually and then the schedule ran as well. So that's why I've got the two invocations. So this is what the event object looks like when a scheduled cron job runs. So yeah, if that's important to you. But yeah, that means that this is running. Nice. And this is what we are logging at. We're logging at the object. That's type object. But it looks like there may actually have been an error. So let's go take a look at my IDE here. It's not seeing an error here, so that's okay. But let's go look at the logs here. Again, I'm going to look at logs of scraper. Make this last 15 minutes. Update constantly. Here is the scraper running at 155, which yeah, there we go. It's retrieving serverless.com. Yay! All right, so here is the page response. This is the response we get from running Axios on that. So actually what we need to do is we are going to, so that's probably why it's actually not working as intended with Cheerio, because we need to get the body out. West. Yeah, we need to get the actual response. Oh, great. That means we are in the right direction. So thanks for attending. Thanks, Zaki, for all the chatter. It's appreciated having someone around to chat to. And we will continue with this tomorrow, same time tomorrow, well, at 10 a.m. GMT. It's 12 a.m. for me. And that's it. Thanks so much for joining, folks, and we will continue this tomorrow.